Welcome back, Royale fans. Guess what? Spring finals are over and we have named a champion in the European, North American, and Latin American regions. To analyze the finals and talk about the winners, I've invited to the locker room Gregan and Findable Carpet from the North American and European broadcast. How's it going, guys?
Yeah, we're good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't get to thanks to Gregan very often, so it's nice to be here and chat with him.
These were really exciting finals. I mean, we knew that every region was going to have the best of the best from the round robin phase, but I really think they exceeded our expectations in the quality of play and the creativity in decks that we saw.
Yeah, I think the amount of decks that everyone were playing was insane. I think in 3 weeks, the top player in North America played 10 individual deck archetypes. Everyone really knew they had to bring their A game, and it was just really intense to watch these players try and develop metas like week by week.
In North America, Oxalate definitely, I think, improved the most over the spring finals. Each week he performed better and better, and by the time the finals rolled around, he was unstoppable. I mean,
I think he knew, like, if I can at least make it up to C McHugh, he's the guy I'm gonna have to make sure I've got the tools to beat. He was practicing, him and everyone at Hammers Esports. He had people there by his back. He was practicing people from other regions as well that were working with him. He went, full training all the way through, and he didn't lose a single game in the finals.
And his training process was really interesting to hear from him. He would find a deck that he really liked and he wanted to bring to the next week that no one had seen him use before, and he would just play grand challenge after grand challenge with it and get as many wins as possible under his belt so that he knew how every card interacted with each other within that deck. And he also would pick those decks based off of his next week opponent. He would study every opposition he had, and he would bring what he thought would be the best chance, which is why he had so few decks, because he wasn't counter-picking every game. He was picking based off his opposition. And I think that's such a smart way to play, and it's something that if every player did it, we'd have some really interesting matchups where players are trying to be smarter rather than just playing what they're super comfortable with.
Oxalate, newer to the scene, it's hard to say if he's going to have the same level of consistent success that McHugh has already had, but McHugh, for the first time in North America, I think he has a rival that just has his number. Both of these players are going to go to the fall season. We're going to see them compete again in just a few short months, and I can't wait to see who comes out on top in the rematch in the fall. Moving on to Latin America, Atchin fought his way from the number 3 seed all the way to the championship, and he did that, I feel, by playing very unlike the rest of his Latin American peers. We saw Latin America far and away played a ton of Three Musketeers. Atchin was heavily playing the P.E.K.K.A. Battle Ram deck that countered Three Musketeers, but almost never brought Three Musketeers himself. So I think he did a really good job of looking at what was working in other regions, play testing with people like Oxalate. Oxalate and Atchin actually play tested together a lot, and came to decks that were not the same as what his peers were playing, and used that element of surprise to push him to victory.
Yeah, well, I mean, Greg, you and I were looking at stats quite a bit, and when you just looked at the diversity of decks between each region, Latin America actually had the least amount of deck diversity. Three Musketeers was like over 50% of the deck choices. I think it was really good on Atchin to really think outside the box and understand, hey, maybe I'll insert something new, something that hasn't been seen before in this region, and people might not, they just might not be used to it. And it worked in his favor, obviously. I mean, there he is. He ended up winning as an underdog, 3rd seed going into it, someone who they'd never heard of him in the competitive scene before, but he had the mind on him to figure out what it took to take down these people that had so much more to their name.
And I think Atchin just shows, even if you have no accomplishments, no prior notoriety in the scene, if you're good enough, you can fight your way to the top and become the regional champion. Over across the pond in Europe, Surgical Goblin is the only number 1 seed to follow through and win his region. Greg, and you were there. What was your reaction live to seeing Surgical Goblin win over Nem Sensei?
Well, the two of them had so much deck diversity that was tough for them to play the next game knowing that they were going to be able to win it. And actually, Nem Sensei used a deck that Surgical Goblin hadn't used before. I think it was a giant miner deck. And then the next game, Surgical Goblin copied that deck, having never used it, practiced it, and ended up winning the whole match with that deck.
With so much deck diversity, and not just flexibility in the decks he plays, but how masterfully he executes them, even if he's only played it never before, do you think Surgical Goblin has a credible claim to be the best player in the world now?
I don't think you can say he's the best player in the world because we haven't seen him against opposition. from other regions on this kind of scale. But I think we can safely say he's the best player at using crazy decks, because there's no one I've seen like him who will just come out onto a stage like that and pick up your opposition deck, pick up cards that other regions use but you've never seen within your region, and execute them so effectively. And that's the way he works. He doesn't mimic other people. He learns from other people and forms his own ideas, and then that's why he's so effective. So he did mimic, obviously, Nem Sensei in the final match, but I'm sure he looked at it and went, I could play that slightly differently and confuse him.
He did switch a card. Out Mega Minion in Goblins.
There you go.
He had to put his trademark cards in there.
He loves
his
the
namesake.
Goblins.
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for our recap of the spring season finals. Thank you so much for joining me in the locker room. Just because the spring season is over does not mean the action stops. Fall season is just a few short weeks away, so if you want all of the information on the Crown Championship fall season, make sure to hit that subscribe button and you'll be informed as soon as the news breaks.